Hi, my name is Alfonso Machacho, and I'm here to talk to you about arpeggios. Now, arpeggios have been an important part of a lot of melodic electronic dance music. Some genres, for instance trance, were practically built on arpeggios. Today, they're used frequently in the progressive and melodic techno genres. But whilst they can be very powerful, they can also be a very lazy way of creating melodies. Here I'm going to show you a few techniques that I've developed that should help make your arps sound less like a ringtone and more like something that people will actually want to listen to. So I'm going to show you how to make a very simple saw wave a little bit more interesting. I'm using Ableton's analog instrument for this, so anyone with Ableton has access to this, and the effects I'm using, I just want to show you that it's not about fancy instruments or effects, it's about technique and effort. The more of those two that you put in, the more you will get out. Don't be lazy and just slap on an arp, it will get boring real quick. So let's set that to saw wave. That's the basic sound, and now we'll drop in Ableton's arp effect. Okay, not very interesting yet. I'm going to set the rate to 16ths. And I'll just close the filter slightly. And now I'm going to change oscillator 2 from a saw wave to noise. This gives the sound a little bit more bite and crunch. So that is, as you can hear, a very basic sound. You can't really get much more plain sounding, but as I'll demonstrate, even the simplest sound can come alive with a combination of automation and effects. And for those of you just starting out, just getting into music production, I can safely say that if there's anything that's a secret in the world of producing interesting music, it's automation. So here I'm just going to automate the arps, gate, and the filter cutoff to give the sound a bit more movement and variety. Okay, so that's a bit more interesting. How about we use some effects? I'm going to use the send to send the sound to Ableton's reverb. So let's take a listen to that in the context of the other elements in the track. Straight away, that's creating some drama there at the end of the loop. Now I'll do the same with some ping pong delay, and I'm also going to improvise some additional notes over the top. I'll bring up the piano roll so you can see what I'm doing. I have no idea how this is going to sound, but that's the beauty of it. So immediately you can hear just how interesting we've made that very plain saw wave sound. By playing additional notes over the arp, I'm getting all sorts of patterns and combinations that I just wouldn't have got if I'd placed a few continuous notes in the piano roll. Well, that's quite lovely, isn't it? It's the randomness and unpredictability that's making this sound interesting, not just the same 3 notes playing over and over again. So I think we can take this a little further. I'm going to show you how the deeper you go into automation, the more you get back from it in terms of complexity of sounds. But first, I'll show you a little kind of cheat that might save you time. So here is a simple pad that I quickly came up with. Nothing complicated or really very special, but I'll play it to you. So let's suppose you want to come up with an arp that will complement that string sound. Well, that's pretty simple. How about we literally copy the MIDI notes into the arp that we made earlier? I'm literally dropping them straight in here. So instantly you can hear how complex those melodies are and how they easily complement the chords that I'd already created. So all I did there was recording a bit of filter automation in real time with the mouse. I always like doing this, preferably with a controller to get away from the straight lines of automation. I feel that when you adjust things by hand like this, they just feel a bit more human. You can also automate parameters within the arpeggiator. So here I'm automating the number of steps. So essentially how many times the pattern will be transposed. Let's go a bit crazy here at the end and see what that turns out like. Well, that's given me the warm and fuzzies. By changing the steps just like I did, I have no idea what notes are going to be played, and that also works for the listener too. It's rhythmic enough to dance to, but not predictable enough to make you bored. One final thing I wanted to show you is a technique I use all the time for coming up with complex melodies, and it's almost not even an arp at all, more like a fake arp. Here I'm going to slow the arp right down and then layer on 2 delays in a series to create a complex melody. And of course, there are now even more parameters to automate. You can change the delay depth, the feedback over time to create massive builds. I just want you to realize that from the simplest of sounds, we now have a really beautiful melody that you would just never come up with by playing this in by hand, or if you try to draw it in by hand in the piano roll or something like that. By harnessing the power of automation and really putting some effort in, trying out new techniques, new parameter changes, you just come up with something completely different. So I guess the message is, don't just leave an arp playing. You've got to fiddle with it. You've got to change parameters over time. You've got to do things by hand. You've got to get creative with it. The more you automate, the more a sound comes alive. And I know I keep saying the word automate over and over and over again, but you really need to be automating as many different parameters as you can. The more static a song is, subconsciously you get bored of it a lot quicker. And by just changing slight things over time, you build up more complex rhythmic patterns that you just never would have come up with if you just click a button on a mouse and hope for the best.